This is a man who has many jobs, has had probably a blur of the last year. And is this correct that during that time you tore your Achilles?
Yeah, that's correct.
How did you, when? Tell me about that.
Uh, yeah. I'm well, all doctors will tell me when I go see them about some stuff that's not feeling great is that I've had a lot of wear and tear on my body, and I think that's just code talk for them being nice to tell me that I'm old. But yeah, I was jump serving in practice, World League Finals in Poland, and everything you see and hear about an Achilles tear, it was. It felt like someone punched me. No pain. Couldn't figure out initially kind of what happened, and then realized pretty quick I'm pretty sure I just ruptured my Achilles, and then um, yeah, I don't know. 6 hours later in the Polish ER, they confirmed with an ultrasound, and I don't know. I'm 3 months post surgery, 3 months and a week or two post surgery, and back in a shoe and walking around, but definitely not where I was. Still working at it.
Well, as a guy who was a libero, your whole body had to have just been beaten to hell for so many years. I mean, the idea that you just dive on the floor with no padding, in other sports, they would think we were abusing. And if you don't, your libero doesn't go all out and crash to the floor.
No, I
Little
was
girl, men, women.
I was really graceful though. I maneuvered around the floor. Look, I don't know. That's my fourth surgery, so knock on wood. Hopefully my last, but there's some wear and tear on me.
Well, since we then have determined that you're old, that you must be wise, what did you learn in the last year as the USA Olympic coach?
Um, yeah, look, I learned a ton, in every aspect of the job and what it entails and where we're lacking and where we need to be better. We got to look at a bunch of less experienced and I don't know, you could hazard to say younger athletes, get them experience playing at the highest senior level, where you're traveling and competing in some big matches. And just the nuts and bolts of being the national team coach. It was a little trial by fire. I got hired in January. I think I solidified my staff kind of beginning of February, middle of February, and but they didn't get in the gym until some of them until May. And so, 3 or 4 weeks later, we were traveling to our first stop in VNL, and just everything that it entails of getting the right players in the gym, um, getting the right players on rosters. We winning is always a priority for me, but probably wasn't at the top of the list. It was more about getting experience and learning. But I think we accomplished a lot of the stuff that I had on my list at the beginning of the summer.
The process is so important. And is it different for you than it has been for your predecessors since 1984 that you're able to know that your Olympic berth is secured? And so maybe your timetable or what you're going to do into the quad is different. And it may not be. I just, I wonder.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. When I started talking to John about the job, that was one of the things that really was appealing to me was that the people don't understand the qualifying process and how stressful that is. Now, there's some advantage to that. You want to be in those situations with your group. You want to be in some stressful situations. But it kind of pushes things out a year for us. And what people don't realize, like the last two quads were really unique. Tokyo with COVID, there were times when we didn't even know that the games were going to happen. So the way that all transpired and then the second part of that with it getting pushed a year is that the Paris quad was not a quad. It was a 3-year deal. And so, reconvening after Tokyo, if I'm assuming Karch was thinking the same way, but if I was on that staff, I'd be thinking, man, we need to be peaking in about a year because of the qualification process. Taking that piece out, There's still a ton of urgency for us to get better and do the things that we need to do so that we're competing for a gold medal in 4 years, but not having to qualify, I don't know, pushes that out maybe with some time.
Yeah. So this is correct. The two competitions that you had for the so-called A team, your top level was Volleyball Nations League and then the World Championships. And then there were
Correct.
other competitions where you were able to send different kinds of rosters. But let's start with VNL. What'd you take out of that? Besides that, you've got to be on an airplane in a lot of time zones a lot. That must.
Yeah, yeah, that was maybe the biggest part for us to explore and observe. You get 3 weekends. Look, I think one of the bigger things learning, and you see it on paper, but you don't realize it, is how short our summers are.
Yeah.
We basically get our athletes back at the end of April, beginning of May, and then we start competing. Started competing on June 4th was our first match in Brazil. And our last match, I think, was September 6th and could have been all the way to the 9th, or maybe it was September 5th. And in those 3 months, we competed in 18 matches. So it's not this, and I don't know the number of practices, but somewhere about 40 practices, with a bunch of them that are, leading into matches. So they're not like a full go where you're, maybe doing the things that you would like to do. So learning how to navigate that space, this summer was for sure different in that we had not different in the number of athletes we had in the gym, but kind of maybe the size of the roster that we were pulling off of. I was trying to get everybody some opportunity to play. You know, some of that was naturally dictated by some injuries or people coming back from the pro seasons and needing more time. But the goal was to use the first 3 weeks of VNL to kind of learn as much as we could learn about the athletes that we have, and I don't know, build a foundation of what we think, that upper little pyramid of the pipeline is for us in the next quad here. Also understanding that there are or were a handful of athletes that were going to return to us from the previous Olympic roster. Look, I thought we did that. Qualifying for World League Finals was a goal, but again, not high on our priority list. For me, it was just a nice opportunity to go, play in a high level match that had some meaning. Um, and then Worlds, when we got to Worlds, we were going to pick, the best 18 to 20 athletes, get them in the gym, train for as much time as we could train, and try to put the best roster we could put together of 14 and go try to win a medal in Worlds. That was kind of the goal at the beginning of the summer, and I thought we executed on that plan fairly well.
Coming out of the Olympics, when the USA took silver and was right there with everybody, but these rosters that you're putting forth, and to your point about not everybody being available, it felt like there was a gap now between Italy, Poland, Turkey. That is that as much because of the roster that you had, or were they playing their very best people, or are they in the same situation, or is all of that gibberish?
Yeah, no, it's not all gibberish. I thought each country probably handled it a little bit differently, but the majority of countries, especially in the top six or seven, eight maybe, showed up with their best team. Italy from day one. We obviously opened VNL with them in Rio, and that's a tough match going into. You don't know, they've got a roster of 30 for VNL that they could pull off of. You didn't know who they were going to show up with. They showed up with their Paris roster.
Mm.
Um, they from day one were in it to win it. That is there is for sure a little bit of a discrepancy here. Like I think we are in the mix, but I thought those three or four teams were better than us. Um, but I also feel like we've got the most room for growth. Whether that's by addition to our roster from players that we already know, or by just, hey, we've got some young players that are on the front end of their journey here, and we know that they're going to get better here in the next 2 or 3 years. I felt like Italy, Brazil, Poland, um, Turkey. I think their roster from what they had is going to look very similar
Yeah.
come LA.
We the one thing we've gone up, we've said it a number of times, is how many players you got to get into the mix who hadn't been at a high level national team mix before. They might have been on the NL rosters or been in the gym. Who are some of the ones who really impressed you? Who maybe were getting their first chance?
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily want to get into all that stuff, but we had a handful of players I thought that really had a nice showing. This process, everyone always asks me, it's kind of funny, being an Olympian, like, hey, how did that process work? Was there just like a tryout a couple weeks before the Olympics and you go make that roster and it's like, man, it's a 4 year tryout, obviously in the summer we're all together and competing, next to each other for spots. But this is a process that continues on in their pro leagues. So, it's great if someone had a nice summer with us, but if they don't kind of solidify that with a nice pro season here, that changes some of the feeling. It's not just about the day that you step in our gym and go, and it'll be like that for the next 4 years. And look, we'd like to get players in the gym, and at some point we got to put a group together. But someone could show up 2 or 3 years into it, whether young and coming out of college, or older and taking a year off, or we've got some players now that are going to start some families that are still interested in coming back. They may not be in our gym for another summer. But I think we'd be doing our program a disservice if we weren't looking at those things. Life goes on, and I think it's awesome that some of these players are starting families and having kids, and we're going to be as supportive as we can possibly be for them, and be happy when they come back to us.
You might have a nursery in the practice gym in a couple of years, the way things are going. Uh,
Yeah, it's actually super cool. It's something that I think we've talked about at USA Volleyball for a long time. The guys actually are in a more advanced situation. They've got a bunch of guys that have families now for a while, and like how can we as a program support that, encourage it, and keep those guys and their families a part of our program.
yeah.
So it's made us look into that. So it's great.
Um, you got me laughing thinking about that. But of the roster that finished in Paris, the only one who I 100% know is not coming back is Lauren Carlini. Personally told me, she said she's done with international play.
There's one more that you know.
And who is that?
You tell me. Think your way through it.
Um, God, I'm not looking at that roster.
Yeah,
Kelsey Roberts.
Jordan Larson.
Oh yeah, duh, yeah. The 900
Those two.
National Player of the Year namesake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, that's a pretty obvious one for me to miss. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But are those the only two who have 100% said to you, I'm done with international play? And has everyone else left the door open?
Yes. The way I've described it is somewhere on the spectrum, right? Of, hey, I'm in from day one. We had a handful of those players. Hey, I need a couple months and I'm going to come back later in the summer. Hey, I need a year. Hey, I think I might be done, but I'm not necessarily sure that I want to close the door on it quite yet. And I've been very open and accommodating for that. People also don't realize, like, we had players coming back that had been playing professionally for 8 years now, and the way that the seasons coexist with the national team season and the professional foreign seasons, you're getting 2 weeks off if you're lucky on the each end of things, and they've been going for 8 years straight. And to get away from it for a year is, to have that luxury for some of our players. I think I don't know. I've talked to a few of them where they've just been like, yeah, I wasn't quite sure at the end of Paris, and now I know, like, I needed a few months off. I feel great. I'm fired up to get back in the gym, and I feel kind of reinvigorated and kind of found my love for volleyball again. Like, I just think for us to go be great, I think our players need to, I'm very much in the mindset of, like, look, we need to be physical, mind and body, right? Like, you need all those things to
Yeah.
to to be right.
Um, Finish up on the national team side of things. Yeah, you had other competitions with uh, like the Norseca Continental, and currently there's a U17 team. As
Yeah.
we're doing this on Sunday that's finishing up. You've got to pay attention to all that aspect of it and
Yep.
all the people who are coming through the system. Just any thoughts about all those other competitions and other teams that you sent places?
Yeah, there's there's two kind of lower level senior team events, the Pan American Cup and NORCECA Final Six. Um, we had groups getting ready to compete in both of those. We ended up not going to the Pan American Cup for different reasons. But I took the team to the NORCECA Final Six in Guadalajara, and they're great events. And then obviously we have all of the under the youth age group stuff, under 23, under 21, under 19, under 17 now. All that stuff has grown and expanded. And all awesome programs. Our NTDP staff has done a wonderful job of building that program, of organizing it, of putting it all together. It's a Herculean task. I think there's, between the two genders, something like 18 or 19 events going on in the summer that they are putting rosters together and staffing, and with significant travel. Some stuff is happening locally on the Norseca side of things in our zone, and then other things are happening around the world. And with a ton of success. Super valuable for us. Not only identifying athletes that maybe have a pathway to the highest level national team programming, but also to get them experience. And it's really interesting to be a part of that. I went through that. You grow up in our little world and you do the things you do, and um, I don't know. I never thought I was all that good, but you think you can do what you do, and then you walk into a gym with Brazil, and you're like, holy smokes, or Cuba. Cuba was an eye-opening moment for me getting to our national team of thinking like, hey, I'm all right at this. Like I'm pretty good. And then walking in and watching those guys warm up. Like, oh man, I got some work to do. So, um, it's a great opportunity for our young athletes to see that, experience it, see how volleyball's played in different countries and cultures. It's a huge part of our pipeline, and I don't know that we have a national team member or an Olympian that hasn't gone through and been part of that at some level or another.
No, it's good. All right, we'll finish up with this because you have nothing else to do. So now you're going to coach Love Austin. And the cool thing about that is, of course, you live in Austin, and that after being there for so long as the assistant coach of Texas, and you love it there. But now you get to have this pro team. There's a lot of players on the roster who you coached previously at Texas, and there's some players on that team who may well end up on your USA Olympic team in 2028. Just thoughts about going into that season. I assume you're getting pretty close to starting.
Yeah, we have our first practice tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Yeah, 5 miles from my house, 10-minute drive. Situationally, it couldn't have been any better. And you're spot on. I get to coach some athletes that we had in the gym over the summer that, um, obviously are doing both. They're playing their pro seasons there, and then with us in the summer with the USA program. But not only that, but I get to coach against, a whole bunch of other athletes that are doing the same thing. So I think it just intimately ties you into, it's one thing to watch video and keep in contact with those guys. It's another thing to coach against them. You really need to be paying attention to what your opponents are doing. And so I feel it gives me a better path and runway to make sure that those guys, or get to observe those guys and how they're developing and what they're doing. And I think more importantly, and not lost on me at all, is just the opportunity to coach. That's the one thing I don't have a ton of experiences is being a head coach. And so for me, when this opportunity came, that was the biggest piece. Oh man, like, I only got 18 matches this summer, 18 plus 7. So I got 25 matches to coach. And I felt like I learned and grew in each one of those. And so to get another 20 plus with Love Austin and get to be able to tinker in the gym and try to figure out best practices on how we train and get better at certain skills. How I get to coach the group, how I get to game manage, all those things were, I thought, hugely valuable for me. So I'm super excited. I think we have a good group. I think we have a great group of human beings. I'm anxious to get back in the gym. I don't know that I'd be able to sit around for the next 4 or 5 months and not have that going on. So I'm super fired up. It'll be fun.
Good deal. He is Erik Sullivan, not only the USA Olympic coach, but the head coach of Love Austin. And great to catch up. And please try not to get hurt.
No more jumping in practice. Everything on the ground.